Hello and welcome. Thanks for joining in to our DAFilms live discussion conversation with Peter Nestler. Hello, Peter. Welcome. I'm Patrick Holzapfel, and I will have the honor to talk with Peter, and we are going to do it like that. We are speaking with each other in English, in German, and I will translate what Peter says into English. Except we already agreed if it's a simple answer, Peter can also try to say it in English. We will just see how that goes. And my first thought when I was asked to conduct this conversation is a bit of shame, because I'm German, and I think Peter Nestler's work and also the way it was received in Germany is a cause for shame in my culture, in my cinema culture, because we didn't give space to that voice that is so important for cinema and could have been so important for German cinema. It is still important for German cinema, but not from the position it could have been. So that is also the position I'm speaking from. And I thought that we are going to try, in the following Peter's own attempt of speaking and showing craft in cinema, that we try to talk about how does Peter Nestler make a film. So I try to, of course, it's a very basic assessment, and there will be examples, but we will just try to come close to that. So, ja, was ich gesagt habe ist, soweit du hast das verstanden. Okay, sehr gut. Dann wollen wir doch jetzt mal beginnen. Let's begin with a question. I'm interested in whether at first, when you meet people, is it people that give you ideas for films more, or is it like is it history, or has that changed for you? When does a film start for Peter Nestler? Where do you feel now this can be a film? Shall I translate?
Mostly when I read, and when I met people too, it can start, but mostly it is eine größere Sache, die ich mir vornehme und die eben aus mehreren Personen, aus historischen Gegebenheiten besteht.
You go for people, but there's also historical pretext, and you search for the relation between people, history, and so on. Maybe we can talk about that with a film that is also here on this platform, a film like Ödenwaldstätten, where how did you find this place, and how does that then develop into the film it is? I mean, where do you start to decide who is in the film and these things?
I showed my first 3 films for the documentary, also die Redaktion beim Süddeutschen Rundfunk, sie eventuell gesendet zu bekommen. Und da war der Redakteur der Abteilung, Heinz Huber, der ein sehr guter Mann war und der auch organisiert hatte die sogenannte Stuttgarter Gruppe oder Schule, mit denen ich aber keinen Kontakt bekam. Dem gefielen die Filme, aber er wollte mir einen Auftrag geben. Und er sagt, die Entwicklung auf dem Land, in den Dörfern zur Industrialisierung. Und gibt mir freie Hand. Und dann bin ich in der Schwäbischen Alb rumgefahren und habe ein Dorf gesucht, das mir vom Aussehen her und von den Menschen, die ich da getroffen habe, gefallen hat. Und auch, wo ich wusste, da gibt es den historischen Zusammenhang mit dem Nachbarort Buttenhausen, wo früher eine größere Gruppe jüdischer Bürger lebte, die dann meist geflohen sind und manche auch nicht überlebt haben. Die meisten aber nach Amerika oder sonst wo ausgewandert sind. Und dann habe ich mich in Oedenwaldstätten bei einem Bauern eingemietet, einem alten Mann, der am Anfang des Films zu sehen ist. Und habe durch ihn das Dorf kennengelernt und die Geschichte des Dorfes und habe immer stenografiert, was er mir an interessanten Sachen gesagt hat. Und diese stenografierten Texte werden gesprochen in dem Oedenwaldstätten nicht als Kommentar, sondern einfach als ein Teil der gefundenen Sachen. Aber nicht von ihm, sondern eben von einem, der Schwabe ist und diesen Akzent hat. Und dann habe ich den Film gebaut mit dem Kennenlernen, immer noch theoretisch ohne Kamera. Und später dann kam der Kurt Ulrich, mit dem ich die früheren Filme gemacht habe, am Siel und Aufsätze. Und hat die Kamera gemacht. Und ein Schumacher hieß er, war Tonmeister vom Süddeutschen Rundfunk. Und Dieter Sieberkröpp hat später noch Musik dazu gemacht. Zu einzelnen Szenen. Nicht so als Untermalung, sondern auch als eine Interpretation von dem, was er empfunden hat, gesehen hat. Ja.
So yeah, I will translate that part. So Peter went to the Southwest German television station, and with his first 3 films that he made, and there was an editor called Heinz Huber, is the name, right? Yeah. And
chief editor for documentary department.
Exactly, and he was a very good open mind, also interested and related to what was called the Stuttgarter Gruppe or Stuttgart School of Filmmaking. And he wanted to commission a film about the development of the villages with or after industrialization. And he basically gave Peter free rein to do as he pleases, look for something he was interested in. And then Peter drove around the Schwäbische Alb, which is a mountainous region in the southwest of Germany, and searched for places and villages he liked. And he found this place, Oedenwaldstätten, which still has a historical relation to Buttenheim, it's called, no?
Buttenhausen.
Buttenhausen, sorry.
Yeah.
Buttenhausen. And there existed a bigger Jewish community that had to escape. Many of them went to the US. And it's in Oedenwaldstätten that Peter rented a room with a farmer who lived there. And he learned basically about the film he wanted to make there through the stories and the farmer told him about the place and the village and the history. And there was like I think it's called stenographical information that was put down on in stenographs, and the film was basically built from there without a camera, we can say, which is a great thought to go to a place and then build the film without a camera first. And then came in the collaborators on this film, which were Kurt Ulrich, with whom Peter worked in some of his earlier works, and the sound person called Schumacher, and I forgot the name. Yeah, and I forgot the name of the composer.
Dieter Sieberkröpp.
Dieter Sürdigroup who made the music, and the music was more an interpretation than just accompanying the images, as you can also hear in the film. So you want to tell us more about
I can say that we had difficulties after the film with the intendant. I don't know how you say in English. Der mir also als Auflage
Director, it's just a director.
Director of the Süddeutscher Rundfunk at that time, Jährige. And he said, yeah, it's okay, it's well done, but you can't leave the people, the audience, without any commentary. You have to tighten together and ja. Und da habe ich mich geweigert und sagt, die Leute verstehen das sonst nicht. Mhm. Und ich habe eben gesagt, sie sollen selber das Material haben und darüber nachdenken können und ihre eigenen Schlüsse ziehen und nicht irgendwie so an der Leine geführt werden. Und ich habe das auch empfunden als eine verachtende Haltung gegenüber den Leuten, die aufgenommen werden. Und später ist mir, später ist mir dann passiert in einem Restaurant in Murnau, also ganz weit entfernt von da. Ich habe mit einem Bauern gesprochen, er hat erzählt, was er macht und was seine Probleme sind. Und frug dann mich, was machst du denn für eine Arbeit? Und ich sage, ich mache Filme und habe den Oedenwaldstätten, weil ich dachte, das wäre für ihn interessant, hat ihn erwähnt und sagte, den habe ich gesehen, sagt er. Und das hätte ich nie gedacht, dass man sowas im Fernsehen zeigen kann. Und das war für mich die schönste Kritik.
Yeah. So yeah, Peter described a bit the problems he had after the film was made, because as you can see in the film consists of puts different voices next to each other without really explaining with this authorial voice, or give the film trusts on the audience to build their own opinion. And but there was this opinion of the intendant, which is a director, that this shouldn't be the case, and but Peter didn't do as they wanted him to do, because he thinks it's contemptuous to explain everything in such a manner where a director just puts his own opinion over the people's voice. And later he found himself in a restaurant in Murnau, which is far from Oedenwaldstätten, and he met a farmer and they talked. And the farmer and Peter told about his film Oedenwaldstätten because it relates to farmers. And actually this farmer had seen the film on television, and he said to Peter that he never thought that such a film could be shown on television, and that for Peter was the greatest criticism he got, which is probably very understandable. Okay, then, because now we already started talking a bit about the frame behind those films, which is always very difficult. And since you also in your work, when you talk about craft and also art, you never spare out, or you never leave out the socioeconomic details that lead to art being made or being not made or being forbidden. I want to speak a bit about what that means in your case. You worked in very different funding scenarios, from German television to Swedish television to with art institutions. How would you say, is there a way to make a film for you that where the money seems to just, it seems okay how that goes, or is it always a struggle with people giving their opinions and wanting things from you that you don't want? Or did you have good experience with production on that side? Hast du mich verstanden?
Ja, kannst du mir nochmal auf Deutsch
Ja, ja.
sagen, die Frage nur.
Genau, ja. Die Frage ist einfach, da du ja in sehr unterschiedlichen Kontexten gearbeitet hast, um an das, also um gefördert zu werden, um an das Geld für die Filme zu kommen, hattest du da auch gute Erfahrungen, oder ist das immer geprägt von Einfluss von Machtspielen, die von der Seite irgendjemand eine Meinung gibt? Wie würdest du sagen, es gab auch ein Produktionsmodell, das effektiv funktioniert hat und dir als Künstler genug Freiraum gelassen hat?
Ja, ich habe mir auch immer den Freiraum selbst geschaffen. Ich habe auch keine Aufträge angenommen, sondern immer vorgeschlagen. Und meistens ging es gut, in Schweden vor allem, wo ich ja sehr produktiv war. Und manchmal gab es richtige Schwierigkeiten, dass ich an die Wand gerannt bin. Ne? Und Film wurde vor der Sendung rausgenommen und so weiter. Wie zum Beispiel Dürfen Sie wiederkommen, der Film über Neofaschismus in der Bundesrepublik. Aber dann, wir hatten in Schweden unter den Angestellten des Fernsehens demonstriert und es gab Zeitungen, die auch darüber berichtet haben. Weil der Film schon in den Programmen ausgedruckt war, und dann sagt man, warum wird ein Film über Neofaschismus nicht gesendet?
Und wurde er dann gezeigt?
Der wurde nicht gezeigt, nie gezeigt. Nur dann später in der deutschen Version. Das meiste ist auch auf Deutsch da. Die Leute, die sich äußern.
Okay. Peter said that he made he created the space, the free space for himself to make the films he wanted to make, and he never took commissions, but always proposed topics and films to the institutions. And the best experience he had mostly in Sweden, but there were also some difficulties, of course, like, for example, with the film May We Come Again. I think it's the English title.
May They Come Again, yeah.
Yeah, which was, although it was already finished and it was already printed that it would be shown on television, they took it out of the program. It's a film about neo-fascism. And there were even then protests among the television workers with Peter involved. But in the end, the film was never shown in Swedish television, but only with its the German version was shown, which it helped that the film was shot mostly in German. Yeah. And
vielleicht kann ich da noch etwas dazu sagen. Die schwedische Zeitung Aftonbladet schrieb dann auch, dass es sich um einen Film handelte, der auch kritisch war gegen die Haltung der Sozialdemokratie, wie sie nach dem Krieg nicht ihre Pläne verwirklicht hat, die Willy Brandt in einer schwedischen Emigrantenzeitung damals formuliert hat. Man müsse den Narzissmus mit seinem Hintergrund, also mit seinen Wurzeln, beseitigen in Deutschland.
And Peter added that in the Swedish newspaper Aftonbladet, it also said that the film was also critical against the social democracy after the Second World War. Maybe you can give me the quote of Willy Brandt again, just to make sure.
Willy Brandt hatte in Stockholm in der Emigration gelebt. Er war erst im Widerstand in Norwegen und kam dann als Flüchtling nach Schweden. und hat eine Zeitschrift der Sozialdemokratie gehabt. Da hat Arno Behrisch und andere mitgeschrieben. Und da hatte er formuliert, dass nach dem Krieg die Wurzeln, der Narzissmus mit seinen Wurzeln beseitigt werden muss. Also mit seinen Ursachen und gesellschaftlichen Zusammenhängen.
Yeah, so Willy Brandt, who also lived in Scandinavia, he published a text after the Second World War where he said to fight national socialism. National socialism has to be to fight it. You have to erase the roots of it. This brings me actually to something that is very important, I think, for the political idea that we have of your cinema, and I'm curious how you feel about that you belong to a generation in Germany that tried exactly this, to fight National Socialism that was still there in society, to attack its roots, so to speak. How do you feel about that, and how do you feel about the developments in Germany that, does this fight feel fruitful for you now after all these years and seeing how it develops?
Yeah, I'm very terrified about what is growing again. And I hear it by people who were really the second generation of the victims, also die jetzt bei der Arbeit, die ich zurzeit mache über Sinti und Roma und die Geschichte, die sind wie auch jüdische Überlebende, die ich kenne, die als Kinder oder junge Menschen im Auschwitz waren, die sind sehr beunruhigt und äußern sich immer wieder öffentlich über diesen geballten Hass, der über die sozialen Medien entfacht wird. Und in Deutschland gab es ja eine Reihe Morde auch. In Schweden auch, damals schon, in den 70er Jahren. Und das ist sehr beunruhigend.
Yeah. So Peter feels great disquiet because also he's now working on a film about Sinti and Roma, the history of the Sinti and Roma, and with the people he talks from those his protagonists in that film, and also they are from the so-called second generation who were in the concentration camps, and they are also very disquiet, and they feel great unrest, and also uttered some public statements about the hatred that goes around in social media. And in Germany, we had in the last years some murders related to coming from right-wing radicalism, and also the same has happened in Sweden before. So we will go back, I think,
ja, vielleicht kann ich noch was da hinzufügen.
Ja.
Die Erfahrung, die ich gemacht habe von Seiten der Bundesrepublik, der Regierung, und ist viel getan worden. Und die Bürgerrechtsbewegung hat Erfolge gehabt und ist sehr stark in Deutschland. Eigentlich Vorbild auch für manche andere Länder, die Roma-Volksgruppen haben. Und dagegen steht eben das, was sich abspielt in den sozialen Medien und in den rechten Gruppierungen, auch Partei. Und es ist eine ganz entscheidende Zeit, in der wir leben, wo es eine Verfolgung also von solchen Hasstiraden geben muss und die entsprechenden technischen Einrichtungen und die eine Behörde dafür geschaffen werden muss.
Yeah. Peter added that his experience with Germany is that that the politics and the government has done something against this right-wing groups and movements. There's also a great civil movement in Germany that is can serve as an idol for other countries as well. It's very strong. But whatever happens in social media and with right-wing parties and groups is working against that, and it's right now a struggle. It's a very decisive time, and it's important that there is a persecution of this kind of hatred. Yeah. I would go. I mean, we will talk a bit more about this, but I want to go back to the making of a film, and then this will ultimately appear again. I want to ask another question about how you work with the institutions and so on. I want to know about do you write like if you approach them with something you want to make, do you write like a concept? Do you write like a script, or what does it look like when you go to them, or do you just tell them what you want to do?
I just tell them, and it's important to say I don't make a film about Roma and Sinti history. It's always in a work together, and to discuss before and to know what is important and what they who are in front of the camera want to transmit and say.
And how then do you work with your collaborators? Do you repeatedly work with the same people? I mean, sometimes in some cases I know, but how is
the last time I worked together with many films already, Rainer Komas, who does a camera, and Dieter Reifert, who is producer and filmmaker too, both camera and sound, and Michael, So we did the film about Picasso in Valoris last time, and directly continued with this one.
And in your earlier works, there was also, of course, very important the work with Shoka. So maybe you can tell us a bit about her influence on your films and what she did. And I mean, she did the sound that we know, but you can maybe tell us a bit how you work together.
For example, the not so easy to film the Zigeunersein, being Gypsy. Da war sie ganz wichtig und in vielen anderen Arbeiten auch durch ihre Art, mit den Leuten zurechtzukommen und eine liebevolle Art hatte sie und die war spürbar und hat sehr erleichtert und möglich gemacht, Wichtiges zu filmen und die Leute auch mit Respekt zu behandeln. Das haben wir sowieso gemacht, aber durch sie ist es auf eine höhere Ebene gekommen. Und beim Schneiden war ich immer wieder mit ihr zusammen und habe mit ihr diskutiert. So, sie hat einen großen Einfluss auf die Filme gehabt.
Asked about Joker Nestler, Peter told us that for she was always very important, for example, also with being gypsy, because of her tender and loving approach to people, that was graspable on the set, and is also, in my opinion, if I may add, also visible in the film. And she made it basically possible to film some things that were maybe difficult to film, or where this kind of trust was needed. And she helped that the respect, which is very important also for Peter, to treat the people that he films with respect, to put that on to another level. That was her influence on the set or during shooting, next to making the sound. And also in editing, Peter edited the films, but Joker was there to discuss with him all the time. So yeah, we can say that there's a big influence, and it's a very close collaboration. Yeah. So I would be interested in your perception of work, because we see a lot of workers in your film, but I mean, the tendency is for a specific kind of worker that is a craftsman or woman, somebody who needs his or her hands to work. So maybe you can talk about what draws you to this kind of work, where, yeah, that's the question.
Because it's fascinating me, and it's film in high degree, to see how something is created. And das ist das lockt mich, also das zu machen. Und auch das Geschick zu zeigen, das Können, das sonst nie beachtet wird. Wenn es Filme gibt über Produktionsmethoden, dann geht es immer um das Produkt selbst, und selten geht es um die Leute, die die Arbeit machen.
Yeah, the topic of craft seduces Peter, and he is interested in the talent, in the craft that it needs. I mean, that the workers need, and he finds that in a lot of cases, when we talk about production, we only talk about the product instead of the work and the people doing this work. But still, I mean, I want to insist, because work is also, for example, a person sitting in a tourist office and telephoning all day, or all kinds of work. So, but there is a specific type of work, and I mean, it's and you have a very beautiful and as you said earlier, tender approach of filming that. So is it, or did it cross your mind to make, let's say, a film about somebody working in a telephone line or something like that, or is it just the craft that is important?
No, it's not the craft for itself. And like in the North Calotte, there is the hard work under also in den Bergwerken, oder diese riesigen Maschinen, die gefahren werden. Und natürlich, aber Handwerk ist, oder Arbeit mit den Händen, wie in den Filmen über das Glas herstellen, von dem optischen Glas bis hin zu kunstfertigen Sachen. Aber im industriellen Maßstab, das ist ein Vergnügen für mich gewesen, zu entdecken und Film draus zu machen.
Yeah, so there's never an idea of filming craft for some aesthetic, or just for the sake of craft. It's never like that, and there is some difficulties in this. There's a struggle for these workers also, and also for other types of work, for example the miners in Nordkalotte. And this is just for him also a pleasure to discover this, that this working with the hand, this craft, like for example in his film about the making of glass. So yeah, this kind of pleasure brings me to something I read recently, that is a story or an anecdote. When you were invited, I think, to DFFB in 1990 or something like that, you proposed to the students to just go to the east of, I mean the former east, we have to say, of Germany then, when it was right after the unification, to see, to discover, to be curious. So that relates a bit to what you just said about the pleasure to discover. So maybe you can talk a bit about the curiosity that is important for making a film for you, the discovery of things, and how this has maybe developed or hasn't developed for you in all these years you're making films.
Now, curiosity is the first thing you have to go after. Also das ist für mich immer die Neugier gewesen, Dinge zu erfahren. Auch Dinge, die ich vorbereitet habe durch das Lesen von Literatur, dann in der Wirklichkeit zu erfahren und Zusammenhänge zu sehen. Das macht mir großes Vergnügen, und das auch mit dem Film, dieses Vergnügen mit anderen zu teilen, ist für mich ein Antrieb gewesen in all den Jahren.
Yeah, for Peter, the first thing is always curiosity, and the curiosity to learn. And it's mostly that he will find something or read something in literature and then discover it in the real world, in reality. And then he tries to find connections, and through making the film and possibly showing the film, sharing this through cinema. And this has always been his first inspiration. Let's talk a bit about language in your work. You in your film, there's such a huge amount of different forms that allow people to speak. Like either they just talk to the camera, or you talk in a voiceover, or there is something they wrote and that is read out, and all. I mean, this is just 3 examples. So can you tell us how you find this, the moment, or how do you find how words and image can relate? Is that something that grows organically out of the research being there, or is it something that is there in the very beginning? Yeah.
Yeah, I have it when it's my own text, so I have it in my head when filming. Und in etwa. Und am Schneidetisch setze ich die Worte und sehe, wie es funktioniert. Aber vieles ist ja beim Drehen entstanden. Also ich schneide im Kopf oft und habe dann sehr kurze Zeit beim Schneiden selbst.
So yeah, if he writes the words himself, he has them basically in his head, like he's also editing already in his head, and then he just puts it to the image during editing, and of course there are some slight changes, but basically it's there from the start. But this is what you write yourself. If in other cases people tell you, yeah, maybe you can talk about that.
No, when other people are talking and I use this voiceover, especially things I did in Sweden and made a German version. You always lose something, but you don't lose when you have voice over the picture. And so it's a bit complicated. You have to find the rhythm, how things are told by the person in front of the camera, and to leave things and to work a lot with the sound, higher and lower, so and find the rhythm and go in there where it's functioning.
Yeah, and I mean, you have an actor's past, a very distant actor's past, but you have your voice is very fascinating to listen to. Was it always? I mean, you have also other films by the Slews and so on where there's another person speaking the voiceover, but is it for you important to speak yourself, to have your voice on the film?
Not so much anymore, because I'm getting older and I'm not so pregnant in how I formulate. But anyhow, it functions. And in the last finished film, Picasso in Valoris, I have different voices of people I know from earlier films, actors, and I have my own voice, so we are changing. And a woman's voice for a man, for example, just to not be too alike, the original voice.
Yeah. Then the next thing I want to talk about is something that relates to. I mean, you can tell me maybe about it first. There was with your film Mülheim Ruhr. I read that some people who saw the film, they didn't notice that it was their village you are showing or their place. And I think Hartmut Bitomski wrote about that in Film Critique, that this is because the concrete has grown foreign to us. We are not used to see something for real anymore. So I like that thought a lot. And I wonder, first of all, maybe you can tell about this, if that is true at all, this Mülheim Ruhr that they didn't know, and then what you think about this actor seeing what is in front of you.
Who live there, they know Mülheim. And es wurde von vielen Leuten bei den ersten Vorführungen, die wir gemacht haben in Mülheim, sehr akzeptiert und das hat den Leuten gefallen. Aber dann gab es so einen Sender in den Zeitungen an den Bürgermeister gerichtet von Mülheim, das sei eine Schande und man könne den Film nur zeigen unter einem geänderten Titel, Die Schattenseiten einer Stadt. Und heute vollkommen lachhaft, aber es war ein richtiger Aufstand. Natürlich steckt dahinter, dass in dem Film auch gesellschaftliche Spannungen angesprochen sind und ohne dass man was anderes tut, als zu schneiden, aneinander zu setzen und mit der Musik zu interpretieren. Der Film hat ja eben nur die Musik, die Dieter Syverkrüpp im Synchronstudio zu den Bildern gemacht hat, also am Schneidetisch die einzelnen Sequenzen komponiert und dann gegen das Bild gespielt hat. Und deshalb auch eingehen kann auf Sachen.
Also live sozusagen.
Ja, ja.
Yeah. So about Mülheim Ruhr, Peter tells us that when it was first shown, it was very well received and people liked it. But then came from the newspaper or from news. Was it one newspaper or more?
More.
More.
Was or NRZ.
Okay, so there were some newspapers that were angry at the film and basically addressing also the mayor of Mülheim and saying, well, this can only be shown, labeling it as a film that shows the dark sides of the city. And there was a kind of uprising against the film, which seems from nowadays, it seems almost ridiculous and also very distant, if I may add, to that a short film will create such a reaction. And Peter thinks it has, of course, to do with that the film is portraying or confronting us with tensions in society, though it only does that by using images and music. The music was like played in live to the image in a studio, synchronized live accompaniment. So, yeah, and maybe
interpreting.
Yeah, interpreting. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and what about this? What is your stance on this idea of the concrete that Hartmut Bitomsky has? This kind of idea that we are not used to see what is in front of us anymore.
Yeah, maybe it's right.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, then let's talk a bit about. I mean, I read you wrote a. I think you wrote a even a text about it, or you said in an interview talking about censorship or self-censorship that we face when people nowadays or always have filmed people, other people, foreign people or cultures, that they somehow, that there is something that stops us from really seeing what we see or from really showing what needs to be shown. So I wonder how you worked with that. How do you overcome that you have the strength? I think you called it once, now I only know in German, Rückgrat. I will Google it, I will check shortly. It's called the backbone. So and yeah, how important is that for you, and were there moments where it was difficult, or has it always been like at the core of everything for you?
No, it's the normal way to react and to work, and not to go to start with the uncertain feelings. Kein unbestimmtes Gefühl. Also ich habe in dem Zusammenhang vom Magen aus gesprochen, sondern das sitzt im Rückgrat. Sondern man muss also sich bewusst sein, womit man arbeitet und es nicht färben und vertünchen.
Aber wenn ich da kurz, bevor ich das übersetze, einhacke, wie erklärst du dir dann, dass es, ich meine, das ist ein bisschen, also es ist schwierig wahrscheinlich über etwas anderes zu sprechen als die eigene Arbeit, aber es ist ja doch irgendwie eine Ausnahme geblieben. Also diese Art Filme zu machen gibt es, und das ist eine die in meiner Ansicht nach auch die richtige Art, Filme zu machen, aber es gibt sie nicht so oft. Wieso passiert das in deiner Wahrnehmung, dass dieses, wie du sagst, Färben und eigentlich Lügen die ganze Zeit, mit dem werden wir nur konfrontiert. Also das ist die Bilder, mit denen ich aufwachse, die ich jeden Tag sehen kann, sind nicht Rückgratsbilder, sondern sind uncertain feeling Bilder.
Ja, und das hat natürlich zu tun mit dem ganzen Aufbau der Produktion, ob das fürs Fernsehen ist oder ob es für Filme ist. Der Straub nennt das die Leute kitzeln. Ne?
Mhm.
Und meinte, das hätte ich nie gemacht. Ne?
Er meint, die Leute kitzeln in
Ja,
Zusammenhang.
irgendetwas, eine Form zu geben, die sich entfernt von dem, was vor der Kamera ist.
Mhm. Ja.
Die, man sagt, flutscht, dann
Ja.
den Film leicht verdaulich macht. Ne?
Mhm. Ja.
Vorgestrichen natürlich.
Yeah. So yeah, we talked a bit about this idea of making films with a backbone instead of like these uncertain feelings of the stomach where you can always color things and also lie a lot. And I then asked Peter how he then can explain, or where does it come from that so many images that we are used to nowadays are different than that. They are not made in that spirit of the backbone. Let's call it the spirit of the backbone, but in a different way. And Peter says it relates to the production systems basically behind them, that can be television or cinema. And he quotes Jean-Marie Straub, who said it's about, he labeled that as tickling people, that can be translated as making things easily digestible and gives something a form that kind of distances basically the cinema from what it has recorded. Mm-hmm. And I want to talk also, not only because now last year you made this beautiful film about Picasso in Valoris, but also painters have been in your films a lot, and you also studied painting. So I want to know maybe first, because we are still now talking about making a film. So how do you conceive what kind of images you want to make? I'm, for example, thinking about from Greece, from Griechenland, where there are these portrait shots, let's call them, of people working or in front of their buildings. Or I remember now the woman taking catching water from the fountain. So how important for you in all this is framing and these things? I remember you saying once that the topic is more important than the art. But still your images look great. So how do you work with aesthetics?
Yeah, I'm in front of the thing I shall film, and I do what seems right, the framing, and you often have not time to construct if you work with these films. You have to be very fast to find and to shoot what is functioning, like this woman with the water from the ground, aus dem Brunnen das Wasser holt, als auch Anfang des Films.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you think, I mean, since you made also some films or more films about painters, but painters with a certain history, it's not, I mean, it's always with your films that, I mean, you always care about all the aspects basically that make a human being what it is, or what it could be, or what it could have been. So, but still, there's a larger amount of painters in your work, and you come back to that. Do you think that has to do with your own education, or is it just
No, auf der einen Seite kann es den Film strukturieren, wie auch die Fotografen, die Fotos, die Dirk Albermann bei Working Men's Club in Sheffield gemacht hat. Aber ich habe ja nie Filme eigentlich, außer diesem Picasso-Film, der es auch nicht ist, über den Maler gemacht, sondern es ist so vieles andere, was da drin steckt. Und bei Zigeunersein von Otto Pankok, diese wundervollen Kohlezeichnungen, die erzählen ja die Geschichte, der ich nachgehe, und tun es auf eine ganz starke Art. Und das zu verbinden mit dem, was ich zu der Zeit damals gedreht habe, an Gegenwärtigem, das funktioniert. Also man kann so eben Gemälde gebrauchen. Und ich habe nie eigentlich über die Maler selbst einen Film gemacht. Picasso in Vallauris, das ist eben die Zeit in Vallauris und die Zeit heute in Vallauris mit den Migranten und mit den Leuten, die noch mit der Keramik arbeiten und den Veränderungen. Und der Krieg ist drin und die Gestapo ist drin und die Freunde von Picasso, die die Konzentrationslager überlebt haben oder nicht überlebt haben. Das ist im Zusammenhang mit den Bildern, die Picasso gemacht hat, ganz wichtig.
So, man kann also sagen, ein Bild ist an sich, es interessiert dich immer die Zusammenhänge, die über ein Kunstwerk oder einen Künstler oder einen Menschen eigentlich hinaus dann zwar wieder auf ihn zurückführen, aber also ein größeres Feld aufzumachen. Okay.
Manche Bilder habe ich bei zum Beispiel dem Ausländer 1 gemacht, Gemälde, weil in den Gemälden, die beauftragt wurden von Bischöfen oder anderen Leuten, die gezahlt haben, untergebracht sind Dinge, die für mich und meine Geschichte, die ich erzähle, wichtig sind. Wie die Koggen zum Beispiel auf dem Gemälde, auf dem christlichen Motiv, aber ganz säuberlich und genau die Koggen gemalt sind, die im Hintergrund im Hafen liegen. Das ist brauchbar. Oder Wandgemälde oder auf Holz bemalte Szenen der Arbeit im 15., 16. Jahrhundert in den Gruben.
So, Peter talks about how paintings, as well as photographers, for example, the ones of Dirk Albermann in ein Arbeiterclub in Sheffield, a workers club in Sheffield.
Working Men's Club in Sheffield.
Working Men's Club in Sheffield. They are also there, or mostly there, to structure a film, first of all. He stresses that he never made a film about a painter, but they somehow help him to tell what he wants to tell. And there is then, he opens in a lot of films, like in Being Gypsy, a connection between these documents that are paintings and the presence. But that's the way he thinks about it. And in the Picasso film, it's not about Picasso, but it is about this time of Picasso in Vallauris, and then there opens up a whole field of different aspects. Today, the migrant migrants there, the war history, the friends of Picasso that were in concentration camps, also the ceramic work in the place. So it's never about a painting in that sense, but about the field it opens up. That's also true, for example, for his film Ausländer 1. Do you know the English title? Does it have one?
Foreigners one, but
Yeah.
It's subtitled anyhow on the Kinemathek in Berlin.
Oh yeah, Foreigners
in
1.
English.
Yeah, and there, for example,
both Schiffe und Kanonen is the title of this first part.
Yeah,
it's a series.
Yeah, Ships and Guns.
Ships
so yeah,
and Guns.
Yeah, it's a series of films. But there, for example, there we can see images or paintings commissioned by a bishop, and they're just there because they have important aspects for the narration. For example, they show the polders, and also, for example, images of workers from the 15th and 16th century. So we can say that that it's like everything else. Basically, you look. Can we say that you look at a painting like you would look at a tree?
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. Then I would like to talk to get back to something we already had in a while back. This kind of idea of moral that also comes into play when already, I think, in every step of filmmaking, moral is decisive for the film. So and your moral, with you, moral is very strong at the foreground of what you do. So earlier you said that a tender and loving approach to the people and respectful approach to the people is very decisive for you. So I wonder, did it sometimes happen that it was difficult to get there? Were there people where it felt difficult, or where you thought I shouldn't film them now, or to just the wrong situation, or did that happen to you?
I don't remember, because I'm discussing with the people appearing in the film often, if possible, if they tell a story. So we are very sure what has to be told. So and if I regret in a situation to contact a person and it goes the wrong way, it didn't happen. Because I knew what should come, and we were in consensus.
Okay, so but it means you because some of your shots seem very instantaneous, in the sense that, like from Greece, it's, to me, sometimes it seems like you meet these people, and the time between meeting them and making a shot is not so long, it seems to me. But it's not the case, or is it?
It's not so long. No.
Yeah, but you use the time to talk to them and to get to know them,
if possible.
Yeah.
In Greece, I didn't understand the language, and but they trusted me.
Yeah. Is that something because you shot films, around the world, you go to very different places, so you probably won't speak the languages most of the time. So do you have somebody there that helps you with that, or? how do you go about it?
In Ecuador, in Pachamama, Nuestra Tierra, I could talk with some of the people, asking simple questions and so I understand. But we had someone with us, a music scientist, who gave me the idea of the groups, the music. I bought a double CD and found it in Stockholm, and then took contact with her about, with help of the Goethe Institute. It's called Humboldt Institute in Quito, and she liked the idea very much, and she were with us in some of these groups, but mostly we had an interpreter who was the driver of the car, and so it went okay. It was not difficult.
Can you, in this regard, traveling to different places, maybe also say a word on the importance or the role of landscape in your films, of nature, in which the people move?
Yeah, I can't say much about it, but the landscape is extraordinarily important. In the films you are talking about from Griechenland, it's very, very important for the whole film. The places where the fighting were in the mountains, and even photographs of landscape when the peasants are working on wild fields and so.
And I mean, were there cases where, I mean, how long does it take for you to find the how can I say, let's ask the other way around. Is it important for you to have first the person, and then you discover the language, the landscape around, or is it like you can also be inspired by a landscape and then find the people? Yeah,
can be.
Yeah,
both
possible. Okay. So I want to know, maybe we are coming closer to an end already, but I want to know, there is some sense in your films. I mean, I will ask in German and then translate. In deinen Filmen gibt es, ich finde, die erscheinen uns heute, ich weiß nicht, wie es damals war, weil ich noch nicht auf der Welt war, aber sie erscheinen uns heute oft wie Dokumente aus einer bestimmten Zeit. Und trotzdem haben sie so einen Gestus, der sich nicht mit dem zufrieden gibt, was uns so dominant erzählt wird. Also es ist so eine Gleichzeitigkeit man registriert, was da ist, aber dieses Registrieren ist schon ein bisschen ein sich wehren gegen eine dominante Narration, sage ich jetzt mal, gegen das, was da ist. Und ich frage mich jetzt einfach, wie das für dich sich gestaltet, wenn du über deine Filme nachdenkst oder vielleicht sie wieder siehst, die du vor 20, vor 30, vor 40 Jahren gemacht hast, ob du sie auch als Zeitdokument wahrnimmst oder nimmst du sie also es gibt ja Beispiele in deiner Filmografie, in denen ich sagen würde, das spricht von heute. Nimmst du das auch so wahr oder wie ist das? Ich werde es kurz übersetzen, dann kannst du dir in Ruhe die Antwort überlegen. I just ask because from my perspective as somebody who was not born when a lot of films of Peter were made, but I also think in general they have this role of being a document of a certain time and place. And at the same time, they have some almost, maybe it's a big word, but almost agitatatory, like fighting spirit that is not happy with what is normally shown. There's something that tries to fight certain preconceptions we have. And I asked Peter how it is for him now to look back at his films or to think about them, because some of them obviously have they seem to be made yesterday to me, but some maybe not, and how he feels about that.
Vor allem ist bei dem Wiedersehen der ganz alten Filme, und das mache ich manchmal, sind die Menschen wichtig, die Begegnungen, die ich hatte. Und die berühren mich sehr. Ich weiß, die Leute leben vielleicht nicht mehr oder es sind bis 50 Jahre vergangen und mehr. Und das ist für mich oft sehr, sehr berührend, die Leute zu sehen wieder und mich daran zu erinnern. Also ich habe nicht wie manche Filmemacher alles beiseite geschoben, was früher war, sondern ich schaue die gerne wieder an und ich schaue sie gerne an mit Leuten im Kino natürlich. Es sind einfach die Begegnungen mit den Menschen, die mich ganz stark berühren.
Peter says that as opposed to some of his colleagues, he likes to see his older films, especially when they're screened in a cinema or only when they're screened in a cinema. And what he keeps most of them is the people he met, this encounters he had. And when he sees them, that's deeply touching for him. Some of those people he has not seen for 50 years, and he doesn't know if they are still alive, or maybe he knows that they are no longer alive. And this is a very touching experience, and he doesn't want to forget also what happens, and that's why he likes to come back to those films. Jetzt würde ich vielleicht in dieser Hinsicht, also ich habe jetzt noch so 2 kleine Fragen. Ich würde gerne von dir wissen, weil du das jetzt gerade erwähnt hast, im Kino sehen, wie fühlst du dich denn, wenn jetzt zum Beispiel deine Filme auf so einer Plattform hier stehen, also im digitalen Raum? Geht es dir damit gut? Findest du das eigentlich gut oder hast du da eine Distanz dazu?
Ich finde es gut.
Ja.
Hat mich gefreut.
Ja. Okay. Also du bist der Meinung, dass das Medium erstmal gar nicht so wichtig ist, was den Vertrieb von Film betrifft.
Leute haben auch große Apparate, sich das anzugucken. Also ist es nicht mehr so in schlechter Qualität, sondern die sind auch digitalisiert und gerettet dadurch.
So we just exchanged shortly about how Peter feels about his films being present on platforms like this one here, like DAFilms, and also I think Picasso in Valoris was also screened online first, no?
Yes.
Yeah. And
at the museum, there are big problems with the copyrights of all the photographers and the administration of the Picasso in Paris. So.
Just to summarize, Peter is happy with his films being present and in streaming or anywhere, and he feels that the digitalization is also it has turned, I mean, it's been much better than a couple of years ago, and the quality can be good, and people can watch it also on bigger screens at home. And in some sense, it's also saving the films. So my last question would be, basically, you already mentioned the film you're working on right now. So maybe you can tell us a bit more about it. What stage you are at, and what is this about?
It's about the persecution and the history of discrimination of Sinti and Roma like Zigeuner sein, but it goes back to in history too, and the Nazi time and the movement, die Bürgerrechtsbewegung. Und die Situation, wie sie heute ist. Es ist nicht ein Film über Sinti und Roma, sondern mit ihnen zusammen. Und der ist während der Zeit der Pandemie sehr in die Länge gezogen, die Arbeit, weil manche Sachen konnten wir nicht drehen und andere Sachen haben sich in diesen 1,5 Jahren angeboten und wir haben ein gewaltiges Material, so viel wie ich nie hatte, und können daraus 2 Filme à 120 Minuten machen.
Yeah. So the film is also about the first part was in English, and then the situation is also about their situation. The film is also about their situation now. And Peter says it's not a film about Sinti and Roma, it's a film with Sinti and Roma, and was made now also during the pandemic, which created a lot of problems and false starts and going back and forth. And this resulted now in having more material than he ever had. And basically that means that we will have the pleasure of having 2 films that will both be 120 minutes long. Approximately, yeah. Peter, there is a question asked also from somebody, so I can ask it. It's about your relation to Straub-Huillier and then your film Verteidigung der Zeit, which turns 15 this year. Just if you want to share with us a few words about your artistic kinship and friendship with Straub and Huillier.
Yeah. I had done the first 3 films, Am Siel, Aufsätze, and Mülheim-Ruhr, when I met Jean-Marie or Daniel in Munich, and he went to Germany for his Bach film, Chronik der Anna Magdalena Bach, to make it. But too, he was in danger to get to prison because he didn't want to fight the Algerians, his friends, he said. So he could not go back to France in this time. He would have to stay in prison of one year. And he had difficulties to get this big project with the Bach film organized and financed. Und aus Ungeduld hat dann Mallorca Muff, den Kurzfilm, gedreht und später dann nicht versöhnt. Und er und Daniel, die untrennbar immer zusammen genannt werden müssen, weil sie wirklich ein tolles Team waren, auch gestritten haben und sich durchgearbeitet haben. Die waren auf der Motivsuche in München nach einem Raum, eine hochbürgerliche Wohnung, und die fanden sie in Bogenhausen. Und ich hatte gemietet ein kleines Zimmer. Die Leute, die die Wohnung hatten, waren meine Freunde. Else Domberger, die unterrichtete in Gesang, also internationale Kontakte hatte. Leute kamen aus Rom und überall, um bei ihr weiter ihre Stimme zu entwickeln. Und ihr Partner war Dichter vor allem, Schriftsteller. Und die Else sagte zu mir, da kommen 2 Filmleute, die scheinen interessant zu sein und die wollen sich dieses große Zimmer, in dem das Piano stand, ansehen und eventuell hier filmen. Und du machst ja auch Arbeit mit Filmen, das ist sicher interessant für dich, mit denen zu unterhalten. Und als sie kamen, saßen wir zusammen und ich habe gemerkt, die haben genau die Auffassung von Film und was es sein könnte, wie ich sie habe. Und war ein gutes Gespräch. Und wir haben vereinbart, ja, ich zeige mal meine 3 kurzen Filme. Das wurde organisiert auch. Und dann sind wir rausgegangen und die haben kein Wort gesagt. Und sind eine Weile zu dem Lift gegangen und dann sagte die Danielle, ich mag sehr den Aufsätze. Und ja, und Mülheim-Ruhr, oh, hat der Jean-Marie gesagt, oh. Dann mit der Zeit habe ich erfahren, dass sie die Filme sehr gemocht haben. Dann habe ich in Waldstätten gedreht und wir hatten Briefkontakt und sie fingen an mit Nicht versöhnt mit der Dreharbeit und daraus wurde eine lebenslange Freundschaft.
Yeah. So in this time they were making, while they were waiting for, there was an impatience that led to the making of Majorca Move and Not Reconciled. And Jean-Marie and Danielle, who have to always be named together, which because they were such a great team, but they also had arguments. They searched for, in this time, they searched for locations to shoot in Munich. They searched for a bourgeois flat. And a friend of Peter, Else Domberger, who lived in Bogenhausen, it's a part of Munich. They found their location there, and Else told Peter to just come because there were 2 filmmakers and he wanted to make films too. So why just not talk to them? And then he came there and they talked, and it was a very it was maybe one of these talks that last. Because they found out, or Peter found out, that basically Danielle and Jean-Marie shared his approach to cinema. And since he had already made these 3 first films, there was a screening organized, which I mean, was it organized by them or?
Bei them and Kirchner, ein Kinobetreiber für speziell. Ja. Und es waren noch andere Leute, auch ein Verleiher war da. Ja, da wollte ich noch was dazufügen.
Yeah, so there was they organized the screening of these first 3 films, and there were also distributors and cinema people there. And then after the screening, they went out, and first there was no word spoken, and then Danielle said that she likes the film Essays, and when it came to Mülheim-Ruhr, Jean-Marie Strobe only made like a sound like, maybe you can do it better for us again. And of course that was a bit disquieting for Peter, but after a while he learned that they liked it, and they went on making their films, and basically a lifelong friendship emerged from this first encounter. Yeah. Okay. Peter, I thank you very much. Vielen Dank. In dieser virtual meeting world. But it was a pleasure for me, and I hope for all of you who have been listening too. And make sure to see the films of Peter Nestler. They're worth every second. Thank you.
Kann ich noch eine kleine Sache hinzufügen? Ja. In dem Programm steht, dass ich nur der Regisseur sei von Mülheim-Ruhr, aber da war Reinhard Schnell auch mit in Zusammenarbeit mit ihm.
Yeah, Peter wants to add, maybe those that manage this website will add this, that Mülheim-Ruhr, he is only credited as the director on the website, but it was also Reinhard Schnell, just to make that sure. So, yeah, good. Vielen, vielen Dank. Thank you very much.
Ich danke.